woman couldn't lead the country, and a woman of mixed race.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened, you lost sack of It was mixed drinks, not mixed races. True, though, Joe may be demented, but I guess being a conniving, race-baiting loon is the last thing to go. Biden also trashed Trump, asking why he's going after people.
When Greg Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly launched a scathing attack on The View following Joe Biden's most recent interview meltdown, you won't believe what transpired. They arrived with popcorn and jokes ready, as if they were front-row tickets to a political carnival. They attacked the performance in a way that was nothing short of vicious. It was a full-on roast that left nobody safe. To be honest, it's been a while since The View has been pulled this hard. And based on their enjoyment, it appears that Gutfeld and Kelly have discovered their new favorite pastime.
What just happened over the past 62 minutes on The View? And it's not even one of my wacky View clips for you where we just make fun of Sunny or Joy. I mean, we love those. But this is like legit Joe Biden, who's on, well, you guys will tell me what he's doing here. And I'll tell you what Mal Calpern says. He's on some sort of a rehabilitation tour. Okay. Anyway, he goes on to The View, and it wasn't rehabilitative at.
In the midst of responding to a simple inquiry, Joe Biden appeared as though he had just realized that he had left the stove on. His most recent interview, not in the "this is amazing" sense, but rather in the "how is this even real" sense, this is pure comedy gold. He struggled with each sentence, as though he was seeing the words for the first time. To be honest, it was similar to watching someone attempt and fail to complete a capture in real time. The entire situation was turned into prime-time fodder for one of the most scathing political roasts in recent memory, with Greg Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly poised to leap in at the last second.
You know who just stunk up The View? The Bidens joined The View this morning for the entire hour. The audience was caught off guard, but knew something was up when they saw a dozen Secret Service agents and 2 embalmers. There were a few awkward moments, though, when a confused Joe asked if he could bid on the showcase. But was he surprised?
If a TV presenter and a stand-up comedian had a child, and that child grew up holding a microphone in one hand and a roast ready in the other, the result would be Greg Gutfeld. He has made a profession out of making uncomfortable political gaffes into painful jokes. Gutfeld didn't simply follow the crowd when Biden's interview went as badly as an open mic night in a deserted town. Instead, he bought the entire thing, painted it in a sarcastic manner, and drove it through The View.
Speaking of those around him who covered up his infirmity, or at least that's where my mind went, Dr. Jill was there too, and as usual, came to the rescue. Watch SOT 30.
A lot of just basic issues, and which I won't go into in the interest of time.
The people who wrote those books were not in the White House with us, and they didn't see how hard Joe worked every single day. Joe worked really hard. I think he was a great president.
She says none of these people writing the books for us. Well, one of the first his book hit interviewed Ron Klain, who was Joe Biden's chief of staff for almost all of his presidency. And he went on the record saying that Biden thought he was president of NATO. Where was that follow-up, lady?
You could feel the tension, sense the sparks, and know an explosion was imminent, much like when someone throws a lighted match over a heap of dry leaves. In addition to making jokes about Biden's constant verbal gaffes, Gutfeld was hosting a lavish party at The View's expense. Gutfeld was busy transforming their damage control into a comedy masterclass, while the self-described defenders of knowledge and enlightenment frantically attempted to minimize the interview catastrophe. To be honest, The View would require their own exhibit at the Louvre if they became any more arrogant about Biden's performance. The train had flown off the tracks and directly into the canyon, but for some reason, nobody on that panel noticed. They pretended that it was merely a minor detour.
Become like a medical hospital that displays humanist failure. Like it's like here, let's look at this political oddity. You know, it's like it really is like the left-wing equivalent of a carnival cycle, except instead of bearded ladies and fat clowns, 2-headed cows. Well, let me rephrase that. But The View is a victim of the sunk cost.
Greg Gutfeld really went for the kill at that point. In addition to pointing out Biden's mistakes, he criticized The View for serving as his personal public relations team and supporting a man who is unable of finishing a sentence, even if it is beautifully wrapped in a bow. Gutfeld depicted them as the conductors of that rogue train, frantically attempting to direct while feigning control. He wasn't mistaken either.
And when for years you've been telling lie after lie after lie, now you're carrying this big bag of rocks around you because it's too painful for their ego to admit that really we're dishonest. And they could be honest. All they would have to say is, look, we hate Trump so much, we were willing to lie about Joe Biden because we felt he was preferable. We thought our lying and our cover-up was on your behalf. Just say that. You're still scum, but at least you're honest.
Biden had just spilled the nation's coffee all over the dashboard, but they were too preoccupied in fabricating the story to notice. Then Megyn Kelly arrived. Kelly arrived with gasoline and a smile if Gutfeld started the fire. Her area of expertise, like a smart ant who's always one step ahead, she blends scathing criticism with that distinctive, I told you so enthusiasm. Without blinking, Kelly pulled up a chair, got some popcorn, and began selling front row seats to the meltdown as Biden's interview went down in flames.
Joe's obviously confused, but it was worse during the break, when he kept calling Whoopi.
Day, and then at night I'd be in bed, reading my book, and he was still on the phone reading his briefings. Just work with staff. I mean, it was nonstop.
Right, Jill. And you're an actual doctor. Not one who got her degree off a box of...
The cold, calculated accuracy of someone who has spent years perfecting the media battlefield was her weapon of choice. She didn't need theatrics. Megyn Kelly used a scalpel like a surgeon to cut through Biden's performance. She made examining it seem like a routine workday, even though it was undoubtedly a train crash. Kelly wasn't going to let The View get away with it. Kelly arrived like a cold bucket of truth, slapping it directly into the host's meticulously constructed story while they were busy honing their Biden's just tired guys justifications.
Deeply sourced from Democratic sources that claim in your final year there was a dramatic decline in your cognitive abilities. In the final year of your presidency, what a response to these allegations, or are these sources wrong?
They are wrong. There's nothing to sustain that. We found ourselves unable to deal with a lot of just base use, and which I won't go into in interest of time. And so we went to work. All the projects, the benefits. How do you lead the world without having the best infrastructure in the world? How do you lead the world without having the best healthcare in the world? How do you lead the world without having...
Her tone was so disbelieving that you could practically hear it. You're still buying this? The cliched statements about aging or exhaustion didn't sit well with her. She wasn't here to spin or show off. She went right to the point. The View's total capitulation to passive nodding rather than actual journalism, and their failure to hold Biden accountable. Kelly believed that The View's refusal to pose any questions was more significant than Biden's avoidance of them. The View appeared more like high-paid cheerleaders trying to divert attention from their quarterback's constant fumbling of the ball after Biden's interview than it did like a panel of political pundits. They seemed like they were desperately trying to conceal a secret that they knew would eventually be revealed, and their looks during the interview were priceless.
About that, they asked him about that moment. Watch this, South V6.
When the vice president was here, I asked her if she would have done something differently than your administration over the past 4 years. And because of all the successes that your administration had, I think her response was, there is not a thing that comes.
As usual, Gutfeld ripped straight through the bullshit. Why are we acting like this is normal? Was his overall sentiment. He was unrelenting, like a child pulling off a bandage to reveal the true unsightliness of the wound. This wasn't a small mistake in his opinion. It was a complete catastrophe, the sort that should be ridiculed, shamed, and preserved as a cautionary tale for coming generations.
Like this happens to you, like this assassination attempt, and you say something, God was watching me. That is a very unchristian thing to say, because it's very narcissistic. What? Well, God was watching me and watching them. There's something very disturbing.
I should have put a plug on that mic yesterday. That's obnoxious. I don't know what church she goes to. That is how people of faith talk, and the intimation is never, he was looking out for me, but not those monsters. Right. It's no, he was looking out for me. It was divine providence. We don't know why he sheds grace on me. And in another instance, this was this tragic death, but it's clear he did. I want to make something of it. I want to do something good with it. That is a completely normal, insane thing for someone to say. It's totally consistent with what I hear Christians in my life say.
Megyn Kelly, however, performed the part of the strict parent in the room. She was unimpressed, unamused, and completely fed up with the justifications. "Is this really the best we have?" was her plain message. However, she dropped the hammer, pointing out Biden's deteriorating leadership skills and portraying them as a rising national embarrassment, rather than providing consolation or sympathy. When Megyn Kelly criticized Biden and the media in general for attempting to hide his mistakes as routine, you could sense the gravity of what she was saying. The unsettling reality? They put in extra effort to normalize the unimaginable, but Kelly wasn't buying it.
As you know, in a 22-minute interview with George Stephanopoulos. But sadly, when Joe heard it was Stephanopoulos, he assumed it was this fella. Snuffupicus. In a recent interview, Dr. Anthony Fauci said he has, quote, no doubt that Joe Biden is capable of serving as president. He says if Biden was really old and weak, he would have had him killed with COVID.
And The View comes next. Gutfeld, of course, was not going to overlook it. In addition to attacking Biden, he attacked The View for allowing the mayhem, defending the unjustifiable, and feigning that dysfunction is leadership. Come on, you could practically hear him ask, "Are we really acting like this is all right now?" It was difficult to overlook the destruction at the end of it all. Biden, The View, and the whole circus surrounding the interview had been dismantled by Kelly and Gutfeld in turns. Viewers laughed aloud at Gutfeld's sardonic remarks about Biden's incoherence, while Kelly's incisive criticisms made sure that nobody would ever forget how incredibly awful the entire situation was. What about The View? Supporters gathered on one side, applauding Gutfeld's comic accuracy and his brutal dismantling of Biden and The View. They saw this as long overdue truth-telling, not just a roast. The devoted supporters, the ones who clung tenaciously to the establishment narrative, were on the opposing side, writhing at the thought of anyone publicly making fun of Biden's evident deterioration. Gutfeld and Kelly, in many respects, pushed the discussion that no one wanted to have. Networks were suddenly under pressure to finally pay attention to Biden's unsteady performance. Excuses? They were quickly running out. Desperate to preserve their party lines, some media outlets rushed to minimize the consequences, characterizing Biden's blunders as brief lapses of judgment. Others, however, were beginning to notice, realizing what Kelly and Gutfeld had been saying all along. Every time Biden makes a mistake, something isn't quite right. More than ever, the media began to take notice. However, Biden's blunders weren't the only thing at issue. It signaled a more significant change, with a new generation of media figures like Kelly and Gutfeld altering the rules. In addition to being amusing, their unrestrained, blunt manner was changing the parameters of political discourse. Creating a neat story was no longer the aim. Now, the focus was on holding leaders responsible and candidly pointing out mistakes. What about the general public? Everyone was excited to watch, share, and take in every bit of the reality check and roasting. What does this signify for Biden's reputation, then? How long can they continue to act like this? That is the true question. Not much longer. Spoiler alert.